Welcome to another Thoughts and Feelings dialogue. I'm here with Brentan today, and we are talking about the subject of money. Specifically, what is the value of money? What role does it play in your life? And Brentan and I work together. So it is interesting. I've never had a dialogue with somebody I work with, so I'm just super excited. And Brentan, welcome to the dialogue.
Thank you.
Yeah. So where should we start? It is such a big subject that is talked about in so many different ways. Does anything come to mind when I say, how do you think about money? That could give us a place to start.
Yes. Well, the reason I wanted to talk to you specifically about money, I guess, is because it seems like, at least to me, and I don't know much about your life, it seems like that's one domain of your life that you have more or less figured out. And so I sort of see money as like one of several different domains in life. Like maybe you have your relationships, and then you have your lifestyle habits, so like what you're eating and how you're sleeping and what your exercise habits are, and like then also your professional like the professional domain of how you're working. And so I see money as one of those things. And I see in my own life, I'm 32, that most of those other areas have more or less become like very calm and regulated and peaceful. And there's the money domain for me. I think that it's trending in the right direction. However, it has not really started circling the drain for me in terms of how I regard it, how I attract it, how I manage it once I've attracted it, and then what I'm doing with it. I think there's still psychologically some gray area there as far as money goes. And it makes me nervous to talk about because I'm talking about a part of my life that's not figured out. And usually I talk about parts of my life that are figured out.
Well, I think that's so wonderful and vulnerable of you. I really appreciate you doing that. And there will be parts of this conversation that I haven't figured out, as much as I appreciate what you said, that I have some part of that figured out. Perhaps that's true. There's going to be angles to it that I truly don't know the answer to, and we'll explore it. I'm excited. So you said something that led me to wonder, what happens when you get money? Let's say there was some sort of disbursement of money to you for whatever reason, a family member, whatever it is, and it was, let's say $10,000. What would the feeling be around it? I'm not even asking what you do with it, but how would that hit you?
Well, I don't know why this feels shameful, but it would be exciting. Like it would just be like, oh yay, I got something rare, and like kind of makes me feel like I don't want to share it with others. Kind of like, oh, it's mine. It kind of brings up this like selfish, excited feeling, followed by the, oh crap, I don't really have a plan for this. So I don't really know what to do with it beyond that. But the initial feeling, I think, is excitement.
Yeah, I mean, I do identify with that. I don't feel that way as much. I used to feel that way more, but it makes me curious about why money should be so exciting. Like, is there like a lens through which money is a useful tool? And I think it would be tough to say that it's not exciting, because if someone gives you like $1 million or something like that, there's a lot. It gives you a lot of power and responsibility and a lot of things that are truly exciting. So I don't think there's anything interesting about saying, why is it exciting at all? But this feeling that you expressed, that you need to hold on to it, and the level of excitement, I wonder if that's the way it was modeled to you when you were younger. Was it?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, there was never really money when I was younger, or at least that's what it's very strange because I'm a millennial and I grew up in the 90s, and like we weren't really in want of things. And my parents made that clear to me. Like my mom was like always juxtaposed the single Barbie doll that she shared with her two sisters against the 30 Barbie dolls that my sister and I independently had. And so we had this stuff, but there was always this feeling, there was this continual anxiety about money in our household. And like bill paying, so different now. I was like so nervous about becoming an adult because I was like, I don't want to manage these bills. Like I'm like 5 watching my parents doing this. I'm like, being an adult looks like it's the worst in the world because once a month you have to sit with all these pieces of paper and a checkbook, and you're doing in your balance, and it's all balanced in the checkbook. And there's always like, we don't have enough for something. So there's this Jenga type of feeling about like, well, what are we doing here? And there was always credit card debt, like just in our house. And I think that that's like what our parents were the most anxious about, was the fact that like, I don't know how much there was on credit cards, but they never, while they were married, they never really got a handle on that. And so it just felt like money was always out of reach. We were always in want of it, even though in our physical surroundings, you wouldn't know that because we had the Barbies, we had the food on the table. There was never anything we couldn't necessarily afford. So in that way, I think there was sort of like this crossed messaging in some ways. But what I ended up picking up on was money is scary, money is hard to get, and there's never enough of it.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like that directly talks to the excitement that you would feel if you were given $10,000 today.
Right.
There's a lot packed into that that emotion of excitement and a little bit of wanting to hold on to it because it's hard to get, as you said. Wow. Yeah, I'm just thinking about it makes me think about how I also feel like money is hard to get. And I often wonder why, because there are many people out there that have quite a lot of money, and you would think that they would sometimes just want to like share with friends or family. I don't know, maybe this is just my fantasy that people would want to share to make other people's lives better. Certainly some people do, but it seems like a very difficult proposition for people to do, is to part with their money. It has to be something that feels clearly valuable to them, at least the people that I've run into in my life. And to create value is extremely difficult. So it's usually emotional. It can be like, oh, you create something in a business context, but you could form a relationship with someone and they could just love you so much they want to like leave you money in an inheritance or something like that. So I think ultimately emotion, as in almost everything in life, is what determines how people part with their money. But it certainly is very difficult. And when you're younger, it can feel like near impossible to get money because everybody's just, it feels like everybody is just saying, well, here's the level of opportunity that you have because you're younger. And there are other levels of opportunity where there's more money involved, but it's hard to, like, you really have to like be in the right circles to even have access and understand it. You have to talk the right language, stuff like that. So is that cryptic sounding?
No. Well,
Okay.
I think like, I don't want to call myself a poor person because I'm not a poor person. And I feel like every year of my adulthood, I'm generating more and more. I want to generate more and more. I want to learn how to use it strategically. And so it's not just like I want to use it in business, and I want to use it to like create like objective value in the world. So it's not like a selfish thing for me. But I think that I've heard that before, and I felt that of like, okay, being a poor person, it's hard to or coming from like, let's say like just families who never really had anything, or families who like the level of success that, you know, people in the extended family have had was like most people just have jobs and then they just have them and then they retire. They have a 401k or a pension or something. And so they're mostly happy with that. Maybe someone created a software and sold the software and he's like the most successful one of the whole family, but it's not as if there's like a ton of wealth generation or knowledge about wealth generation. And there's also a lot of just sort of like, well, be frugal. Like you have to be very frugal with the money that you have. And that's sort of like the messaging that comes through the families. And so I think like by the time you even get to be 18 or 19 years old, you're sort of already indoctrinated like that. It's like, what would I would have to like, if I looking back on it now, like I'd have to like go major in finance or something at a university in order to like even understand that money can be conceptualized in a different way than sort of like the poor person's way. And that's like a pejorative name. I don't really want to call it like the poor person, but I'm putting myself in that category, like the person who doesn't know anything about money. That like that's what they know about it, and like they don't know that it can be generated in other ways.
Yeah, you know what you're saying is making me think about something I think about a lot, which is that our feelings about a lot of things, money very much included in this, come from the culture that we grow up in. And it sounds like you and I, at least in the bare bones structure of it, grew up in a similar way. I grew up in a lower middle class home. I don't know what economic bracket, if you describe it in terms of lower middle class or upper middle class or whatever you would call it, but it wasn't like wealthy. I don't even know if it was upper middle class, what you're describing. But there are very clear messages about the scarcity of money. And I believe that holds people back, because frugality, in my opinion, is not the way to making money or wealth. There are people that save their money bit by bit for their entire life, and then they have generated wealth when they're in their 70s or something like that. I would not call that a very successful thing to do. It's great when you say generated wealth, but I think that there need to be like a lot more playing around with the ideas of what wealth means. But in any case, I don't think that it's the best way to make money to be frugal. When you not lose with money like you waste it, but when you think about it as one asset of many assets that you have that are equally valuable, your health is more valuable than your money. So clearly that could be quantified in the same way that money could, since you would buy health with money. Same thing with like relationships. If you could buy like a loving relationship, probably tons of people would. You can't, unfortunately, for many that would like that. So there are so many other resources that are just as valuable or more valuable than this metaphor for value that is money. And I think when you start thinking that way, you'd be a little bit looser with money. And I'm talking to the general person that feels that frugality is the way to wealth. And you would see that you can exchange value in many different ways. And frugality seems like a poor way to gather. Well, does that resonate with you at all, or is that?
I mean, yeah. I find, well, I don't know, like, if frugality means that you're going to generate less in the future than you would if, like, you weren't frugal, because I don't think I've, like, had enough repetition of experience to speak to that.
Right.
But I know personally from how I feel about spending money that I don't feel as good about it when I'm being frugal.
Yeah. Something about it feels wrong. I mean, because you what I do know about you is that you work hard and earn that money to then turn around and be frugal and not let's say, give yourself enough of a reward that would make you feel happy or well taken care of or something, would feel like some sort of inequity, perhaps internally. I don't know if it does feel that way, but it would feel that way for me if I was, because I work very hard, and if I didn't reward myself properly, in my definition of properly, then I would feel like I was depriving myself, and it would feel like a mismatch or like I want to say untruthful, but it would be out of integrity with what I feel, what feels right to me. Do you relate to that, or do you feel oppositely, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think like right now, the amount of money that I'm generating is enough for me to actually like give myself rewards.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been times where I've worked really hard and I have not had enough money in my bank account to give me those rewards. And I've felt like, oh, I'm going to this coffee shop, and do I need to transfer money out of my savings account to buy this cup of coffee? But I'm like in the middle of a work day at the same time, and I'm working really hard to like get everybody everything that they need, and I still feel like I can't afford this cup of coffee. That feels like crap to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to, because I think the other thing from my childhood is that like watching my parents struggle with it made me not want to deal with it. And then I decided, I was like a very creative kid. And when I was 9, I was watching, Meryl Streep movies. And I was like, I want to be an actor. I want to be like Meryl Streep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that was actually like crafty and creative. But I think the other part of it was that like, if I watched like the Academy Awards or something, and I watched these people walk down the red carpet, it looked to me like money was not really a worry.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really something they ever really thought about. Like we graduated from the need to think about this at all. And I was like, oh, that sounds perfect. I'll do that for a living. I'll just like do that and I'll never have to think about it. And so I wanted to be an actor, and I trained and all of this stuff. And then of course, like the business is like very different, because this is an industry in decline at this point, which I didn't realize when I was picking my college major. Like that did not enter my mind of like, how useful is this really to other people? But now you're in an industry in decline. I had 0 business classes in college. Like the most that we had was like an alumni came, and you can go if you want, and they'll talk to you for an hour about what it's like to move to LA after you graduate. Okay, that's not really useful. So like graduating college, I didn't really have any skills. The only skills that I had were like, I can go be a barista. I can go work in retail, just like minimum wage jobs, basically. And then I did that for a long time. And and I think that I did that because there was like this avoidance. Like I still just like, I didn't want to go get a 9-to-5, and I didn't want to like get skilled in something that was useful enough to other people. And then maybe around the time I was like 25 or something, and I was also teaching yoga during all this time, which also pays like crap. And I met Ollie, and Ollie is 13 years older than me. And I think that I needed that. I needed somebody who just like had been around the block and had put on their big boy pants and dealt with things, and had just been like, hey, here's what it's like to be in the world. Go get a job. Why don't you go get yourself certified as a project manager? You might be good at that. He's a project manager. So he started that whole thing for me. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go do this. And so since then, things have felt a lot better, because I've been able to feel that I have something really valuable, that other people agree with me, this is valuable. I don't have to go try to convince them that it's valuable the way that I would as an actor, or even really as a yoga teacher. Like, that's still like a job of just trying to go out and like convince people that this is something that they want, versus like project management. Hey, I can be organized and I can move work from A to Z. Like, I have 20 people raising their hands saying, I want that. So I think there's something also to that I just wasn't understanding growing up, because I grew up as a millennial whose parents told me, you can be anything you want to be. Thanks, mom and dad. But really, thank you, mom and dad. But at the same point, nobody else wants me to be those things.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the tough part about if they really give you that message, that exact message, you know, because that is something that I hear a lot, and I wonder, like, the small, slightly different versions of it that parents give. But I think Ollie gave you something very valuable in encouraging you. I don't know how he knew that project management would be good for you, but there is it is not something to take for granted to be good at something. And because I work with you, I know that you are extremely good at project management and communication. And it's possible that communication could lead you in other directions related to some of your core strengths. But doing what you're really good at, that is valuable like money. That is a resource that you have. I know this because my wife has gone through a couple of career iterations, and there were a few years where she didn't feel like she knew what she was good at, and it was very depressing for her. She was just floating around here, and I'm not getting validation from the world. And she didn't really care how much money she made. She just wanted to feel like she fit in somewhere and saw her own value reflected in other people's eyes. So, and I know a lot of people that are just like, yeah, I'm fine at a bunch of things. I don't know what I'm good at. But if you find almost anything that you're very good at, I think that's a resource. Now, you may say that that's easy for a person to say when they're not worrying about money as much, which I haven't said yet, but you know, if we assume that's the case, it may be easier for me to say, but I am certain that that's a thing of tremendous value, to be good at something. And that's an asset that I think some people who are wealthy would say, yeah, I would pay $2 million for that or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if you could package that and sell it. There are people that spend a lot of money on various types of self-help and psychology, coaching, whatever it is, in order to find themselves. And this may be an element of that. So it is very, very valuable, that thing. So I'm glad you found that. And that is correlated with money. But to me, generating money is a lot broader subject than that. Like there's a lot of things you can do besides just do the thing that you're good at. For some reason, I'm curious if you have taken courses or been influenced by a particular school of thought around money, because I find that subject interesting.
Oh, interesting. Not yet. I'm reading a couple of books right now, and I think it's kind of like the next frontier in my life, which is maybe why I was interested in talking about it today in general.
Right.
There's been a lot of other things I've been trying to get a handle on as an adult, to be honest. Yeah. And like, you know, I just want enough money that I'm not like worried about it all the time. And things are fine. Like, it's not, it's just like, hey, I don't have enough money to like redo my house right now. Like, but I have enough money to have a house. So
yeah. What's kind of fascinating about that is on the one hand, I hear you and I'm like, yeah, that I feel that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like that's a genuinely held feeling. But then I also think that if someone gave you a pile of money, you, after a while, you'd become acclimated to it, and you would be like, well, I could redo my house, but there's this bigger house that would give me so much more that I'm looking for, that Ellie and I are looking for. And I know that to a point, it makes sense to want more. Like there's a certain level, it's like, yeah, you need to have needs met and some level of entertainment and enjoyment met. I totally get that. But I wonder, for some reason, I'm assuming that you're already at that point where it's not, you're kind of saying it's not a matter of like necessities or even being able to travel or something if that matters to you, and you enjoy that. But I wonder, it's interesting because the expectations can keep rising, essentially.
Right. Yeah. Like it also kind of comes down to like when you have conversations with other people about money and like what you're worth. And like that is always an uncomfortable conversation for me to have.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's different for you. Maybe you've had more, I'm sure with everything else, with practice, you get better at it and you just learn how to navigate that stuff better. But I do notice, for example, if Ollie and I are together and there is a question about, let's talk about money, I will deflect to him. Like I will just be like, oh, cool. I could just peace out of here. I get a free pass. I get out of jail free card here. And he just has to deal with this conversation. So I don't know. I would just be curious from your point of view, because you have these sales calls with clients all the time, right? You're talking about money pretty much constantly all day. Like, what have you learned about negotiation, or like, how do you feel about it?
Well, I don't think of negotiation as an art, and I know for some people it is. I am more a fan of the idea of understanding and feeling really secure about the value of the thing that you're selling, and then stating it plainly. If the person tries to negotiate, try to understand where they're coming from. Do they have a real, financial need for the price to be lower? Or is it just going to be tough for them because they're dealing with somebody else? That's often what it comes down to, for them to get the money, decision past that person. But my general feeling is it costs what it costs, and it's not right for you. That's completely fine. But people can sense when they talk to me that the thing that I'm selling is worth at least what I sell it for. That's what the sense I get. Now, very few companies relative to the entire pool of companies can afford the product that I sell. And that's fine. It's a very high-end, comprehensive product. I would be tempted, let's say the company wasn't doing well, to sell it for a lower price, but then I'd have to lower the quality. And it's because I know that if I lower the price, I will lower the quality. Well, I'm sorry, it's not because I know that. That is consistent. The message is consistent. It costs the amount that I sell it for now because it is good enough that it should cost that. Like there's a lot of people's time going into it. I'm not basing it on what people will pay. I'm basing it on what it costs to do. It should be much more expensive. But just my confidence about it is mostly what sells it. Like I believe it. I can explain it many different ways. So I don't care for negotiation personally.
Now, what if you got into a situation where you were like, here's the value, here's what that cost, and the other party was like, yes, the value is there, I totally get it, but I can't do this, I can literally do 30% less, like not even just like a little bit less, like 30% less. Do you try to work with them? How do you handle that?
Usually not, because then as much as I might like the person or understand what they're saying, well, if they're not being genuine, if they're just trying to negotiate, then I don't want to continue the conversation. The conversation's over
Right.
from my side. If they are being genuine, that's what puts me into a more interesting situation where I started thinking about the company, and and I say everybody is going to have a tougher time, not only because the same service is being sold for less or we're under resourcing the service, but because a certain precedent has been set. And typically people that pay less are more demanding. So if they're being really genuine, maybe it's okay. Like they'd need to be like, I'm so grateful, thank you so much. But you value things less when you pay less for them. So it would be tough to get me there. However, every now and then that does happen. And if you are genuine and honest and you're not just negotiating with me, I will try to make it work. And there are ways to say, okay, you're going to get lower resources, you're going to get lower results, but you're going to be in the system and you're going to be able to scale up when the time is right. I'm open to that. There's nothing that I won't listen to as an entrepreneur. But generally speaking, I'm not doing a service to my company if I am going to let the product go for a lower price. Nobody ends up winning there. It has to be that the value of bringing that person in feels strong enough to me, where the relationship matters to me, or I think they'd be a phenomenal client and everybody would love working with them. Like working with a nonprofit, example, like let's say a nonprofit that everybody really got behind.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so like the person who's paying less is going to be more problematic for you?
Oh, absolutely. I've learned
that. Because here's the thing is like, I've always been like the poor person, right? Who's always looked at price and cannot like, and when I say poor, it's like always in air quotes, like it's not, I didn't come to this conversation with the right adjective for myself, but okay. So I'm always looking for the bargain. I hate that I just used that word, but like the family I grew up in would rather you have 12 pairs of crappy Walmart pants than one pair of really nice pants that fit you so well that you just love, that will last you for 10 years. They'd rather you have those 12 pairs of pants that are going to itch and they're not going to fit you and they're going to fall apart. Like that's where I grew up in. So I'm sort of always looking, like there's a lot of times I count myself out as a consumer because things are too expensive. And yet on the other end of it, when I think about like starting a business or something, I hear this type of thing of like, price your products the right way, price them for the value that they are, and they will be too expensive for people, and that's okay. And I have not come to peace with that yet.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because you're early on. I totally understand that, because the market has to bear that. You have to have a few people paying it to build that confidence to say, yeah, it is worth it. And then you'll realize that most people can't afford any really good product unless it's been mass produced and they've figured out quality pretty well. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways of doing it for consumer products, but something really high quality, the majority of people are typically not going to be able to afford. And perhaps you don't like that and you want to go with something all people can afford because or most people can, because that's part of why you're doing what you're doing. But the way I think of it is that I just have to accept that. And I'd rather put out something of phenomenal quality, knowing that fewer people can afford it. And those will be people that buy, and that will support the company and feed families. And I feel good about it. But right. So you have to have the right confidence in your business model to price it appropriately, only if the market bears it though. I just want to mention that, because you can be like, yeah, it's worth this much and people aren't paying it, then it's not worth it. Yeah.
Well, and I'm just thinking of pricing it at the market rate. And I'm thinking that seems so expensive to me. But then I'm just like, no, I think I have to do that, even though some people are going to be like, oh, that's too expensive for me. Because like if you go to like a membership program for yoga or something online, you're looking at something between like $25 and $60 a month. And I'm trying to get something where like somebody could just pay me Netflix every month, which is like $12 or something like that. But I just fear that what I have in my mind of what I want to produce, this membership idea, is a little bit more value than that. And so I'm also struggling with like knowing that it's going to alienate consumers like me, who I don't want to alienate because I am the consumer I ultimately want to attract. But it's going to alienate them to see that like, oh, I'm charging you $50 a month for this. But here's a reason, like, this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I mean, for me as a consumer, I would rather pay like $200 a month for yoga subscription than $10 a month, because I'd be worried that the quality isn't good enough. Now, I'm not necessarily right about that, because Netflix quality is crazy good and whatever it costs a month, it's negligible. So but you have to remember Netflix is in a different category where there are people that are pouring millions that are like begging to pour millions of dollars in it, and it's a public company, but so you really can't compare yourself to people where the game is just different. At the level of starting a business and, being an early entrepreneur, there's different models. There's some audience that wouldn't touch a $10 yoga class. Like me, even though I feel weird saying that, because I don't know. But yeah, it's true. I am attracted to things that cost more and seem to justify it, because I like the idea of, quality means so much. I'm the opposite of the way you described the family you grew up in that I would much rather have fewer pieces of clothing that really are comfortable. And I don't mind paying for it if that's the case. And this would be at, I think, any level of money. I mean, I've had no money, and I've had a lot of money, and I always felt that way. I didn't ever want to have scratchy clothes, so to speak.
Right. There's like a Slovakian saying that Ollie shared with me once that's like, I'm not so rich that I can afford cheap things.
Okay.
As in, like, it costs you more over time to like continually be doing the maintenance on your crappy things that you buy. And so he taught me a lot about, no, you get one Patagonia vest and it's your favorite vest and you wear it all the time. And that way you don't need 6 vests that you kind of hate a little bit, but that all cost you $30 a piece.
I like what he says. I feel I have a variation on what he says. I don't like to limit, and forgive me if I'm not thinking about it correctly, or I'm myopic, just in my own world or something. But I'm of the belief that if you like the Patagonia vests, get several of them and make yourself feel great. And then when you take care of yourself and feel good, your feeling of value will rise, and it will be easier for you to make money. And I've always done this at every level of money. It's not that if you know that there's like a neuroses or an insecurity or something that's forcing you to spend, that's totally different. Then you got to be really careful with yourself. But if you're genuine and thoughtful about it, I'm a big fan of investing in yourself. You really want something, buy it for yourself. Then you're going to almost have the pressure on yourself to generate money to pay for it. And you need to be a little bit more creative. Maybe not every mind works that way, but I've always been a fan of that. It's one of my core philosophies is take care of yourself, and you will find that, spending money on yourself makes money come more easily. And again, huge caveat for people that are spending money because it's filling a hole that has to do with an emotional state, a trauma, a feeling they have, whatever it is.
Right. And I think there is some of that in my family as well, which maybe is why it gets confusing, or I have been confused about that, of like, how much should I spend? Because it's like, at what point does it become problematic? Oh no.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But
it's kind of like law of attraction stuff a little bit. I mean, it's just my own feeling apart from that specific philosophy. But if you really believe that you deserve good things, other people will see that you feel that way about yourself. They will find it attractive and they will be more willing to buy from you.
It is interesting that money kind of comes back to like how you think about yourself.
Yeah, it does. It comes back to, yeah, I think about it in terms of culture again. I always think about culture, like what you were taught as a kid. And I think it's so interesting what you've shared about your family of origin. And I've just briefly shared that I grew up in like a lower middle class thing where it was like money was fetishized as this like amazing thing. Oh my God, they've got money. Look at those people over there. They have the nice house on the block or whatever. Because it can really cause limitations. Like if you, let's say you grow up in a wealthy family and then that family loses all their money, I still think you are going to end up either wealthy or at least having plenty of money in your life because you talk the talk of people in that world. So I often think it's interesting when, let's say, wealthier people are just like, yeah, people, I don't know why more people don't understand art or opera or something like that. I mean, they're not finessing their senses, their tastes enough. They're not really opening their minds to it or something. And it's like, no, that's just the way you grew up. If you never saw any of that stuff until you were 20 or something like that, you probably would never like get it. Like, or not that it's something to be got. It's just something that is important to certain people in society, and they really value it, and they're willing to spend a lot on it. And that's just a cultural thing. You either have it or you don't. If you grow up around the things of wealthy people, you will probably end up in those circles, and your relationships and your connections and your business connections and the people you marry, or the person you marry, you're gonna end up with a lot of money somehow. So I just think the culture has so much to do with it. And if you're taught you have to scrap for every little thing and you work hard and just be happy with, the minimum wage that you're making or something, and it's good, honest work, and maybe that works, but you could have been taught, what it's like to be in the world of art and to buy and sell $1 million paintings or something like that. And both of them are just different cultural things. No one's better than the other, but one leads to wealth and the other leads to maybe just barely having enough.
Yes, it reminds me of like, it's hard for a poor person to become rich. It's hard for a rich person to become poor.
I've never heard that, but that makes sense.
I think that I've heard that.
Well, if you just coined it, I love it.
But I'll take credit.
Yeah. It feels true to me. It really does. It does seem, that seems true to me. Does it seem true to you?
Yes. Well, and I just started watching Schitt's Creek on Netflix. Somebody recommended it to me, and I can't really get into it because I keep being like, why are these rich people who just lost everything, now they're just acting like poor people? That seems weird.
Huh.
They've been rich this whole time. Like, don't they have connections, or don't they, like you would just think that the way your mind operates is at a completely different level.
Right. Not a better level, by the way, just a different cultural, layer or, part of level. But it's not like better or something. It's just the way you grew up. And I feel obligated to say that, I know a lot of people that have a lot of money and the happiness levels are not higher. Convenience levels are higher.
Right.
Time is not even higher. Sometimes time is way lower. So it's not that you can make any inference about somebody in terms of the overall value or contentment or sense of meaning they have based on the level of wealth they have. But I will say that it is incorrect that people who have a lot of money definitely have more valuable things in their life. They simply have a lot of that one thing. They've often sacrificed enormously to get it, and have done so to such a degree that they are fixated on it a lot of the time and don't know what else to do. It's hard to separate from it because to make a lot of money, you often have to work very hard for many years, and then that just becomes you. And it's hard to untangle it and say, what really means something to me? Can I connect with the things that the little boy or little girl that I was cared about, or that I care about now as an adult? And what is meaningful to me? This is a very difficult question for people of all, economic levels to think about.
I imagine it might be hard if you are somebody who has had money figured out early in life, but not these other aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It might give you the false sense that like, oh, things are figured out, because I don't know if you agree with this, but it seems to me like messaging from like our culture at large. Like I know we've been talking about culture that have been mostly like our families and like the beliefs that you grow up just around you, but even more at large, like our culture seems to, I mean, this is like the cliched thing of like money equals happiness. And there's really this push that like money should be the thing that you're trying to get, and more than anything else. And it seems like maybe even there's a disadvantage to having money figured out as like as the first thing, because it may make you feel like, oh, I don't need to figure out any of these other things. And just kidding, 30 years later, I wake up and I realize, oh, there's like this black hole of misery that I haven't really been paying attention to, and I don't really know what to do about it.
Yeah, that's spot on. That's literally, I've experienced that. Just making a lot of money when I was younger, selling companies when I was in my mid-20s. Well, what happens is not everybody, many people feed your ego and tell you that you're really smart. Many people respect you mostly because of that. And they think you have it figured out. But my experience is that I was working so much to try to be clever and come up with really good business ideas that people weren't doing, and unique ways of delivering it and unique ways of marketing, which has always been my kind of strategic advantage is marketing. And I was so busy doing that I forgot to have a social life. And I'd be working all the time, like till like 4:00 in the morning. And I was like, this is great. And I literally would think to myself, like unconsciously, oh, when I have a certain level of money, people will just like me more, because I'm already seeing a little bit of that. People respect me a lot. I didn't take a moment to think to myself, because maybe I was afraid to on some level, that I was giving up the thing that I would have wanted to buy if I could. I mean, as silly as it sounds, which is just good relationships, meaningful conversation, people that love me and care about me for who I am. But I was going the opposite direction, and I didn't have a good social life. I didn't stay in touch with my friends in a good amount of my 20s. And when I did, I was just so grandiose because I was so proud of myself or whatever. And I would say that I was kind of poor when I was my richest, that I had been at that point in my life in my 20s.
Very interesting. There is that saying from the Bible, like it's easier it's like the camel passing through the eye of the needle. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it would be for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, I think is what it is.
Yeah. I hope that is not, the case, because I don't like to discriminate or be negative against people.
Oh, yes. I did not mean that.
No, you were not doing that. You were not doing that. But I do think a lot of people in our society are just like, oh, someone's rich, fuck them, like they don't need anything. And
totally.
Yeah. And I just don't care how much money somebody has. It's easy to say that, right? You need to be a certain level of like comfort or whatever. But I just care so much more about the way people live in the world, what they feel, what they think, their energy. That matters so much more to me. And I'm curious about people's problems, their ideas, what they think about. That's what I care most about. So I tend to find the subject of money interesting, because it was fetishized in my family. I worked so hard to make money. I realized what a fallacy a lot of it is. And I realized what's good about it too, because the convenience and time thing is true. But yeah, now I'm like, oh, that's what I want. Can I use my money for that? Because, like investing in thoughts and feelings. That's me just costs money to do that. So I'm trying to do that. And that's where I'm trying to figure it out.
I mean, this whole idea of like people hating rich people, like I think that there's a little bit of that in me too. And I was big Bernie Sanders person for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that there's like, and the whole like Occupy Wall Street that happened many years ago, I think has sort of gotten people into a place where like they really don't like people with money or rich people.
Right.
That I've been trying to kind of work my way back from. I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Jordan Peterson, who was like talking about like, hey, with this whole like the 1% and the 99%, and like you being alive right now on this planet, you are part of the 1%. Mm-hmm. And when I heard him say that, just like it opened my mind up to the possibility of like, wow, what if I'm not poor? What if I'm already totally rich? And these were just concepts that I'd never entertained before. Mm-hmm. And it felt so good to allow myself to entertain them, almost as if hating rich people. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, but mm-hmm. I'm still confused about our billionaires, to be completely honest. I'm like, I don't know what they're doing with their money. That strikes me as weird. I don't know, but it's weird that I think about them and then I connect that with me not making as much money, as if like that actually had some connection there. And I don't think there is. But for some reason it's been very like they're rich and therefore I can't be, or something has been a little bit, I think, under the surface there for me for many years. And I'm just now kind of coming to grips with like, no, we can all have enough. It's fine. There's things out there for all of us. We can all be rich, if rich is just like having what you need to live a fulfilled life, which is going to be a different amount of money to every person. And I don't know if that's the best definition of rich.
Oh, there's so much in there. There's so much in this. I mean, the first thing to think about is to be a billionaire, you have to be something on the level of like a psychopath in terms of how much you work. I would find it difficult to imagine that any billionaire spends quality time with their family. Maybe they value family and see their family and that they care about that. But I just don't think you can spend at least the amount of time I want to spend with my family and be a billionaire. I don't think it's possible because it's ridiculous levels of competition. Your time is demanded tremendously. You have huge responsibility. You're sacrificing for perhaps the greater good of a company you're creating or something, or perhaps for an endless desire for accumulation or whatever it is. You're sacrificing a lot of the quality of your life, I believe. And you may be flying around in private jets, but I doubt you are just like, this is so great, like you're. So, and I have mixed feelings about the idea of billionaires too, only because at a certain level you start to be associated with the people that kind of make the systems that we all live in, like, Congress or something like that. And you can pay them to keep the system going for you. And I'm trying to not make this sound like a conspiracy theory, but it's true. I mean, there are many lobbying firms that you can pay, and they will do their best to keep a law the same or change the law or something like that. And you get to play with the system more. You're not working hard and seeing the result of your money, seeing the result in that people pay you money. You can move numbers around in a spreadsheet and make money, or you can just, you're at such a high level in terms of playing around with the strings of the system that people are in at that level, that it's a reasonable question to ask, is that right? Because these people are not better than anyone else and deserve better. There's a good argument to be made that if they earned it, that they deserve a huge reward for that, because we want them to keep doing. We want more Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Keep doing things, Elon. Keep making money, but the level of reward and the type of access it gives, is that proper? I think that's a legitimate question, but I appreciate your candor in talking about like how tempting it is to just hate rich people. I just feel like, why is it okay to hate anyone for a characteristic? Well, I suppose there's a lot of negative characteristics, but something like that's, I just think that there are many people and groups that, like journalism, that profits from extreme feelings people have. And it's like, when you have just the idea, there's always going to be a 1% in everything, in violin players or whatever it is, there's a 1%. Just to hate 1% of people feels like not a good use of energy, and just like generalizing too much. Who are those people? Do you hate those specific people? Maybe you do, that's fine. But I don't know, it doesn't feel healthy to me.
Well, yeah, I don't even know who these people are.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
most of them, like, yeah, you can name Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Warren Buffett.
Right.
Like, but most of them, I'm like, who are you? I don't know who you are.
Right. And I think journalists and stuff will make sure to emphasize the corrupt ones. And of course there are corrupt ones, and nobody's a fan of those people. But people that are hurting people, making people's lives more difficult. But yeah, I think the whole attitude there, if you can think more independently and just try to get down to, what do I value in people? It's probably not, I value people that have less than $1 billion. And once you hit $1 billion, then I stop valuing you. But if you think about what you value in life, I don't know, I like the idea of focusing more on that and focusing less on what other people have. That just seems like a huge distraction and waste of time.
Well, I am learning a lot from you in this conversation, because you keep rerouting to the concept of value. And I think that's fair. I think that's like a fair thing to think about, in a way where like money is just one type of value. So, or money is a representation of value. And so is the conversation really about money, or is it really about the value that money represents? And it sounds like, even like you're talking about like the negotiation and like, I want to make it about the value. It's more about the value than it is actually about the money, which I think is a helpful way of looking at it. Because when it's about the money, I get so confused. I'm like, why would I tell you that I'm worth $45 an hour instead of $50 an hour? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I can articulate the value that I'm providing in that hour, then I feel better about the price that I'm asking for.
Yeah, that's what people are looking for anyway. They may not know it, but they're looking for value. Like if you could make someone feel more present and more healthy through yoga, and they knew that, and they were like, I just feel so good with this, they would pay triple if they can, if they can afford it. That would be no problem. It's all about the value. But yeah, money is an interesting thing in that it has value in and of itself as an emotional, psychological concept, because it's the sort of universally exchangeable thing where you can buy many things of value with it. And so that's, I think, why it's so attractive, because you can do whatever you want with it. But it itself doesn't have the value of many of the things that you wish you could pay for. Like using your time well in your 30s, for instance, and enjoying life. People would pay millions of dollars that have that for that. Imagine, say, you can have a year in your early 30s back, when your back didn't hurt, and when you were young, and you you look more the way you always liked how you looked, more so than when you're older or something like that. You had more mobility and more of a free mindset, whatever it is, people would pay so much for that. And it's interesting just to think about that. Not that you can do anything about that, but just how much value things that you already have, contain. So, but I do want to be clear that I'm not simply saying, oh, don't think about making money. I think about making money all the time, and I love money. Money is wonderful. But I try not to get into the trap of believing that it's an end in and of itself, because it's clearly not. And yet you should feel good about having plenty of it because it absolutely makes life easier. I like the idea that, I can pay somebody to clean my house, to come a certain amount of times in a year or whatever, and like
in a day.
In a day, right?
Come twice a day.
I'm like, how do I describe time period that most people would want cleaning in? But I love that idea. That is something money is great for, because it would be a terrible use of my time to clean my house constantly and dust it and use products that I don't even know the right ones or whatever. So that's what it's good for me. But then mostly I'm searching for things that almost tragically for younger me that didn't understand this, money cannot buy, which is just how do people feel about you and what relationships do you have? Money really has almost nothing to do with that.
Yeah. I mean, I had two instances in my life where I woke up and realized, oh, I'm independently wealthy from yesterday. One of those was like when my mom passed away, there was a little bit of money that she had left me. And it was very weird to wake up that morning and just be like, what am I going to do with this? Well, what I'm going to do with this, pay off my student loans. But it was interesting to note that there was no happiness change whatsoever from one day to the next.
Oh,
I was excited, like I told you, like you were like, hey, what if you got $10,000? I'd be like, I'd be excited. Yes, there was that. And then there was that sobering moment afterwards that's like, oh, well, this changes pretty much nothing in terms of how I think about myself and the world and my place in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how that works. People have so many misconceptions, again, because there are a lot of people out there saying that, like, this is a great thing, that you need to learn how to do this. And, they profit off of it in some way, whether it's just writing an article or something, or teaching a class and charging you for it. But did you have the same experience? That you mentioned a second instance? You don't have to get into it if you don't want to, but did you have the same experience, or it was exciting, but didn't change who you are in the world?
Yeah, I would say so.
Was that the only experience? Like, I guess I worry that we go too far in the direction of, oh, money doesn't matter. It's just value. And there's a lot of things that have value.
Oh, it matters immensely. That's why I'm having this conversation with you right now, because I know that it matters immensely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, in the second case, it was more of like, oh crap, I'm not organized to know what to do with it. Like the first instance was like, it was very clear, I'm going to pay off these student loans and I'm going to open a yoga studio, which I'd already had in the works. And I was like, I'm going to allow myself to live off of savings basically, and give myself the learning experience of being a business owner, not put the pressure on myself to have to go generate income somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So that was clear of like, what is this going to be used for? Mm-hmm. But then the second time it was not clear what it was going to be used for. And that was very anxiety inducing. That was like, I just felt like I was totally out of my league. Like, who do I need to talk to? Who can I talk to? Like, you don't always feel like you can be frank with people in your life, even close people in your life, is like really what's going on with your financial situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely that's another subject of like, it changes people's view of you because people have like as if you're a different person or a higher person, or maybe a person that they can't trust as much because now your values must have changed or something. If you, end up accumulating money for whatever reason. So yeah, that's unfortunate, because then you don't want to like not be truthful or not have a chance to have an honest conversation with people that matter to you. You'd like to share that. It's confusing.
Yeah. So in that instance, like that fortune just kind of evaporated, which is fine. Um, but yeah, I was just like, I just didn't know what to do with it. And now I feel like okay, that taught me of just like priorities, because there were things to do with it. That's the funny thing, is like there were so many things to do with it. It's just like, how do you prioritize things? How do you organize yourself around it? It just like, it didn't compute. So I think that what it's done for me now is I'm able to like prioritize my projects. I know which projects I would be interested in, and then it's like, oh, cool. Like I could have investment properties or like something like that. Like there's like different ideas that come to mind now that were just like completely not even there at the time. Mm-hmm. So we shall see. But I think like, and I also like earning my money. There is something, like with my mom, or like, she had life insurance, let's say. Like I didn't earn any of that. So it doesn't feel the same when you just get it in your bank account. And so like now I appreciate earning what I get and seeing how that translates into the projects in my life that I'm passionate about.
Wow. We just have a few minutes left, but I'm kind of wondering where we're arriving at. I feel like we are such a big subject. We're arriving at someplace interesting, which is that money matters. We want to earn it. It feels good when we earn it, especially when we earn it doing something we're good at. It grants us freedom and time, to a certain degree. All that is good. But it's almost like this thing that you need to keep it at a certain level. You need to moderate properly, because if its value starts to become confusing and gets inflated, then you end up with too much money and too little value, or spending too much time trying to earn money, not understanding why. And I'm not quite content to say, then that's the balance we all have to keep, is,
right. It's a little trite.
Yeah, that feels trite. For some reason, I was like, it always occurs to me what the cliched thing to say is.
Yeah, me too.
Right. And then I'm like, but do I believe that? And since I don't know, I just said, I don't know. I don't want to say that. For me, I'm just more focused on like my inner world and my relationship with money there. Because I find that that's mostly the game that I'm playing. Like, to quote unquote win the game, I'm going to have to come to terms with what money really means to me, and try to treat it that way, and ultimately bring the most value into my life that I can, so that I feel meaning in my life. Not even happiness, but mostly meaning. And what role does money play? Some role in there. I don't know. A significant minor role, let's say.
That's fair. A significant minor role.
Yeah, something like that.
I would agree. I mean, I think that there's maybe a reason why it's sort of been the last thing on my to-do list, mm-hmm. to like get my money affairs in order, because there have been more, just having like harmonious relationships is very important.
Yeah.
Being satisfied with who I am and what I'm bringing to all of the different various conversations and tables that I have in my day. Am I satisfied with my level of contribution? Am I satisfied with overall the feedback that I'm getting from other people? Mm-hmm. And it took me many years to get to a place where like I could answer yes to that question. Mm-hmm. And so up until that point, it's like, well, I'm not going to read this book about money. I'm going to read this book about how to have hard conversations with people. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read this book about, I don't even know, any number of things.
You clearly read a lot of books, as I can see from behind you.
Any number of things. I love books. But yeah, or like just books about my attitude about doing things that I don't like doing. Like, you know, that has been valuable to me, getting my attitude straightened up about so many different things in life so that I don't wake up every day feeling sad and depressed and anxious and like not really knowing why. And I guess like money has kind of been like the last thing there. So I think all of that is to say that like I would agree that it is, what did you say, an important minor role?
Yeah.
Significant minor role. Uh-huh. But it is very significant in the sense of like, hey, depending on how much money you have, you're sitting in this house or you're sitting under a bridge somewhere. So there is something to it, and it's very important in that regard. But there are definitely more important things.
Yeah, the scale of it matters because if you get, right, if you're like at a certain level where you have time to think and sort of orchestrate your life generally the way you want to, I think that's really important. Like money matters a lot at the level of poverty, of course, but it matters less and less, and many of us forget it because we still are remembering the lessons of our childhood. Most of that were modeled, not even, like externally taught to us. And I think if you can more focus on that and realizing what's behind your actions with money, this idea of like, that you want to stay at the same economic level you are unconsciously, and that you end up doing that, that's interesting. I don't think it's for lack of ability or hard work or something that is probably true most of the time. I think it's because people find it uncomfortable mentally to be, at a different money level, lower or higher. So I think figuring that part out, what's behind all this, becomes, at least for me, a bigger challenge in life and more important. And I still have stuff I need to work on to do with money because I still focus on it a good amount and always want to make sure I'm safe, even though I am safe. I mean, it's amazing. Everybody worries about that at any level. They want to be safe. They want to have enough. Are they okay?
Right. That's what I suspect. I mean, I guess like in my perfect world, I would never have to think about money. I could just think about all the things that I like to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's realistic for anybody. Like even the billionaires, like they're probably thinking about money more than anyone.
Definitely. Yeah, you don't get that way without thinking about it a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really like that's not a good goal to like get to the place where I don't have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that many people with a lot of money would be very jealous of your life, just to throw that idea out there. I mean, I'm certain of it, just statistically it would be true. So yeah, it just becomes this thing where you need to figure out what's like right for you and be, present with that feeling, know yourself well enough that you're like exploring the inner world you live in. Because I think a lot of that determines how much time and energy you spend on money. And I'm all for spending a ton of energy on money. If you have cool things you want to do with it, it means something to you, it makes you feel secure. But when you don't know why you feel insecure and you're using money as a distraction, as tons of people do, I think then the inner exploration would be a better use of your time. So Any parting thoughts? This really strikes me as a dialogue that is going to stay with me and will keep developing over the coming weeks. But I don't know if there's anything else you want to say as we wrap up.
I think we covered some good bases here today. I don't really know what I've taken from this conversation. It'll have to sort of settle for me, as is typical. You know, it's like you don't really know what you get from something until a while later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel the same way. A lot of it's getting filed away somewhere, and when I'm sleeping tonight, will percolate, and then tomorrow I may wake up thinking of something, or something will remind me of it in 2 weeks. Because yeah, what we talked about runs so deep, from the very external of the numbers in our checking accounts to, feelings of being valued, feelings of being safe, having enough, parents being proud of us. I mean, I don't know what levels it goes to for you, but it runs so deep. It's a hard topic to talk about. That's actually one thing that I'm coming away with from this conversation that I hear echoing.
Yeah. I mean, I like talking about it, but I don't talk about it that frequently. And I feel like I've kind of bumbled through this conversation precisely because I'm not so practiced at talking about such things. But I think that it's good to talk about. And my hope also for this, because this is ultimately going to turn into a video file that's going to go on YouTube, and other people are, one would hope, going to find this and see it. And my hope would be that there is something relatable in here for other people to grab onto that makes them feel less alone, and like they've been seen, and that maybe there's even, if like, I know so many artists and so many people who are living like not even paycheck to paycheck. I don't even know what you can call that. What some of my friends are doing in that space. But just like, I think that sometimes there's those types of people they have a stigma against 9-to-5 jobs, or just having some sort of marketable skills that people will pay you well for. They have a feeling that it's going to be boring. Like I used to think this, like, I don't know if you know this, but when we started working together, that was my first 9-to-5 ever before.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, I was like, not just getting used to like the work that we do, but just like a schedule period. And here's your calendar.
Wow. That's fascinating.
But before that, there was such this stigma against it of like, oh, it's going to be boring, and these suits, and it's going to be super serious, and it's not going to be fun. And like, I just had such a great time, actually, like learning a skill, becoming good at it. And then work is fun too, for the most part, sometimes, often.
It's going down with each second that you're elaborating. You're like, it's okay. It sucks.
I'll survive. We're gonna have a talk on Monday, sir. There's the hard talk coming up. No, but that there's some people who are operating in that place, and I was in that place of like, crap, like I don't want to constantly be managing how poor I am all the time. Like I don't want to have all of my mental energy into, can I afford this coffee or this sandwich? And I have to choose. Like that sucks. So for me, getting that skill was very, very helpful. And so my hope would be like, if people are listening to this or whatnot, that like things like that emerge from this conversation maybe are helpful in some small way.
Agreed. And even though I know we're ending, I'm interested in that you've referenced a few times the idea of like even using the word poor or being able to afford coffee. You talked a little bit in the beginning, something like that, or am I overspending on something like that? I think if you have a valuable, marketable skill, as you do in at least the area that I know, knowing you through work in the project management and generally communication, I don't think you could be financially poor. It'd be hard to do. You need to make sure that you're paid for the value that you have, and as you keep growing, you gain more value and keep getting experience. But Yeah, that should make you feel more secure and buy more expensive coffee than anything. Um, is like that's not going away. You have you. That skill is only going to get better. So, yeah, I would feel good about that.